Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and iTWire TV interview. Today I'm joined by David Hughes, the founder of Silver Peak and the Senior Vice President of Aruba's WAN business, with Silver Peak now part of Aruba and both owned by Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Alex, great to have the opportunity to chat with you today.
And thank you for taking the time. Now, I'm sure that most people watching know exactly what SD-WAN means, but what is your simple explanation of it and its benefits to companies?
Sure, I don't know if everybody knows, but SD-WAN stands for officially Software-Defined WAN, when WAN stands for Wide Area Network, of course. But software-defined doesn't really mean a lot to most people. So I prefer to think about what we do as trying to build a self-driving WAN. So it's another SD, self-driving. And the goal is that in traditional networking, you have maybe hundreds of locations. And at each of those locations, you have some devices you need to configure. And you have to configure them with thousands or tens of thousands of lines of instructions per device. So there's probably millions of lines of CLI, command line interface. They have to be typed just right in all those routers and firewalls. And if you get every line right, then the network does what your business needs. So the idea that we had with SD-WAN, and we started building EdgeConnect before the words SD-WAN even existed, is what if we could turn this upside down and we could just describe what is it you want the network to do? So for each set of users or applications, here's some goals in terms of uptime and quality of experience, and how I kind of generally want to route the traffic. Do I want mesh or hub and spoke? And given that really high-level description, which you can fit on a single network, let's use automation, machine learning, and AI to just make it happen. And of course, just like self-driving cars, it's an aspirational goal. We're not all the way there yet, but I think at Silver Peak, we really raised the bar in terms of getting pretty close to this idea of being able to have an intent-driven or goal-driven network.
Yeah, I mean, you hear SD-WAN from companies all the time. I mean, I see all sorts of ads, and it's. I mean, if you sort of pioneered it, it's become de rigueur. Everyone's doing it.
Yeah. I think at the base level, it's about the software-defined piece is about automation and just being able to use a network that can combine your traditional network, which is like an MPLS network, with internet capacity, with wireless capacity. So that's a more foundational kind of view of what SD-WAN means. But yeah, where we're aiming is that self-driving WAN.
Sure. Now, since Silver Peak was acquired by Hewlett Packard late last year to become part of its Aruba business, please tell us about how the combined companies are delivering all these solutions to customers.
Yeah, so Aruba, and Silver Peak, both of us are companies that have been born at the edge. We're born at the edge of the network. Aruba with wired and wireless LAN, and Silver Peak with the WAN. And so coming together, we have kind of an edge-driven solution. And that's in contrast to other companies that might have been born in the data center or born in the cloud, which, born in the cloud sounds like a good thing. But what I want to convince anyone is that the edge is a really important place to be. And it's where all the transformation's happening, digital transformation. The edge is where people and technology meet. And so we can help our customers transform their business, transform from data center-centric way of doing things to a cloud-first way of doing things. And so that's what we're doing. We're working together to provide this really complete portfolio at the edge that includes both LAN-facing and wireless technologies, as well as the WAN-facing technologies that Silver Peak brings in.
Yeah, I mean, the edge is where you push the boundaries, right? That's always there.
The edge is kind of where it happens. And I think so many people are focused on, things are going out of the data center and into the cloud. They forget that all the people, us people working in our homes, or when we get back to the office or in the factory, or when we're going to to a retailer or going to pick something up from a restaurant because you can't eat inside, that's all the edge. And that's, hopefully going to get more exciting in the next few months as the pandemic recedes. But regardless, you look at companies that, have gone further down that digital transformation path, they've generally been able to cope with the last 12 months better.
Yeah.
And that's in kind of where we see innovation happening. And I think we'll hear more and more about the edge in the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of veer off tangent for a second, I mean, the last 12 months has seen an incredible amount of digital transformation pushed to accelerated speeds
Yes.
because of the pandemic. Although we weren't lucky, in inverted commas, to have the pandemic, I mean, we were very lucky that we had it when we were at such an incredible level of technological development. And, I always like to say that, science fiction novels and movies show us that we're still, even for all our advancements, we're in the black and white era of technology. If we imagine 100 years down the track, we'll think how primitive it was,
Absolutely.
but how advanced we were to be able to use Zoom and a lot of the technologies I'm sure that you and Aruba and Silver Peak and HPE have been developing have helped companies to maintain their networks and deliver all of this bandwidth that was required, which otherwise would have been a disaster. Imagine if we were doing this in the dial-up days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you announced updates to your Secure Access Service Edge platform at the Atmosphere 2021 conference. Can you tell us a bit about the conference, but also talk about the integration with the Silver Peak's Edge Connect SD-WAN platform and what this means for business and for enterprise customers?
Yeah, so Aruba has what we call an Edge Services Platform, which is a framework for helping customers with this transformation from the edge. So whether it's work from anywhere, giving users more consistent and easy access to their applications, or it's about digital transformation and securing IoT devices. There's kind of this need to both transform your network and transform the way you do security. And so what we have brought together in ESP is kind of a three-layer platform. One, the connect layer, where all the physical connectivity happens, where the packets get moved. Then a protect layer where security occurs, and what we talked about is edge to cloud security. And then the last one is around analyze and act. And so the layer that has AI operations and orchestration and so on. So that's the broad picture. And when I came into Aruba last September, when the acquisition closed, my first job was to look at how do we bring Silver Peak into ESP and add value, create value for our customers. And first we identified, we want to be able to fit into Aruba Central, the kind of umbrella management framework that Aruba has. Mm-hmm. We wanted to be able to look at how could we enhance security, both for the user to application use case, as well as for these digital devices, and making sure if someone, bad guy, breaks into your, say, digital camera, your surveillance camera, he can't go from there to break into the point of sale system or start getting into your email. And so what we announced at Atmosphere was a number of initiatives. So first of all, we integrated with Aruba's ClearPass, which is a system which lets us implement zero trust networking, so that that camera can, if you hacked it, all you can see is the surveillance head end, nothing else, because that's the only thing that camera has to talk to. So if you get on that system and look what's out there, it's like, wow, there's only one thing on the network. Similarly, if you hack the point of sale system and you were there, the only thing you'd see is the transaction processing head end. You wouldn't be able to see the cameras or the surveillance head end. And then maybe there's a contractor, in the branch, an HR contractor. He'd be able to access the HR applications, but if someone hacks his laptop, that's all they're going to see. They're not going to see the cameras or the surveillance head end. So this is the idea of zero trust networking and role-based policy. So based on someone's role, we only allow them to see the elements of the network that are necessary to get their job done if they're a person, or their job done if they're a device. And so that was, one of the powerful concepts we announced. The other thing we introduced was our Secure Edge portfolio. So we have, from the Aruba portfolio, the VIA endpoint client. We have the SD micro branch offerings, which are basically Aruba access points that have WAN connectivity. We have our SD branch, so a wireless controller with integrated SD-WAN capability, and Edge Connect. And so whether you're on the road, at home, whether you're outside in a tent in a testing kiosk, whether it's a small branch, a big branch, a factory, or a headquarters, we've got this portfolio that has people covered from the point of view of edge connectivity to the wide area network and the internet.
And we've heard a lot about zero trust over the past few years, but I'm assuming that what you're explaining about what was announced at Atmosphere is like a new level of maturity for zero trust that basically delivers on zero trust's promises.
Yes, yeah, it's a comprehensive. We've got kind of comprehensive security both for that user to application use case and also for the IoT use case.
Yeah.
And we've as a kind of networking and security industries come together, we've been adding more and more security capabilities in the product. So we've had a firewall, stateful firewall for a while. We had zone-based capability, core segmentation. And then with this announcement, we've got that really fine-grained zero trust and some other capabilities like intrusion detection and prevention as well.
Yeah, I mean, just from the point of view of the endless, reports of hack attacks and people breaking in through SolarWinds or through Exchange floors. I mean, this whole concept of, stopping people there, and they even got in, but I mean, stopping people there and that's it is something the industry has long needed and clearly desperately needs to implement as far and wide as possible because the hack attacks aren't going to slow down and the bad guys keep getting more brazen.
Yeah, that's right. And this idea is sometimes called microsegmentation. It's popular in a modern data center or in the cloud. And really what we're doing is bringing that microsegmentation to the edge so you can have that same kind of capability in a retail branch or in a local office or in a factory.
You know what it reminds me?
We think it's just as important.
It reminds me of the fact that businesses have often talk about having silos, and digital transformation was meant to break all those silos down and allow everybody to work together in a more collaborative way. And one side knows what the other side of the business is doing. But in a way, this is bringing silos back, but for the bad guys.
Silos for the bad guys. That's right. I mean, what you want to do is let everybody work together, kind of minimize friction. But yes, by setting up these role-based policies, you're really making it silos for the bad guys. So if they get in, they're stuck.
Yeah, that's it. So deals with both AT&T and Verizon were recently announced. So, which other companies are you working with? Are there any other company examples you'd like to give in the US? I think I'm going to ask you about some Australian companies in a moment. But, what other partnerships that are really important to the success of SD-WAN platforms?
Yeah, so both AT&T and Verizon are large, the top two carriers in the US. And so obviously we've signed partnerships with a number of service providers over the years, including like NTT out of Japan. And in conversations with other ones in the region in Australia and Asia. So what's really important about those relationships is that customers, when they go to implement a new WAN, they have a choice. So they're going to kind of buy the technology and then implement it themselves and buy the bandwidth and links separately, or do they want to buy it all from one person and buy a fully managed service? And so the service providers allow us to give our customers that second option. So they can decide that they want to go with an AT&T or an NTT or Verizon, whoever it may be. And they'll implement Silver Peak technology or Aruba technology on the customer's behalf. But the customer's got the so-called one throat to choke. They're buying the bandwidth, they're buying everything from the one place. So when something goes wrong, there's only one person to talk to. Of course, that's not the way what everybody wants. We've got a whole suite of options. Some people want, just give me the technology, I'll do everything myself. And some people call that the do-it-yourself approach. Actually, that's pretty popular with SD-WAN as well. And then in between those two, there's a continuum. So we have customers, for instance, that want help getting their network installed and up and running. But once it's working, they want to manage it themselves. And so we have a variety of partners that help with customers no matter where they sit in terms of their preferences.
Sure. And given that iTWire is based in Australia, although we do have a global readership, can you tell us about any customer and industry success stories in Australia and the local region?
Yeah, so as with anything in enterprise technology, most customers are pretty reluctant to talk publicly. But so we've got a lot of wins in Australia and New Zealand and broader Asia region. But some of the names that we've had public press releases and discussions with, that have like Southern Cross Stereo, Jimena, Minta Allison, the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment. So those are just a few. And I think if you checked out the website, there's more detail on what we're doing with each of them.
Sure. And what else should everyone watching know about the expanded Aruba business since the acquisition of Silver Peak?
Well, it's super exciting. So, one of the reasons why, Keerti, who started Aruba, and myself, when we got together, a bit more than a year ago to talk about a combination, we're both really excited by what we could do together. We had kind of a really common themes in our culture, so we knew that would work. We both, as we talked about, were born at the edge from the point of view of where our customers started. We both started around the same time. Aruba started in 2002. Silver Peak, we started in 2004. And what we realized is that by coming together, we could deliver a more comprehensive solution to our customers, and it's what customers were asking for. So since closing the acquisition in September, things are going really well. We've got a lot of momentum, and it was so exciting to be able to kind of talk about this first batch of innovation at Atmosphere last week.
And so, what's a little bit about your history in the world of tech that led you to come up with the idea to create Silver Peak way back in 2004?
Yeah, so, at the beginning, I was an entrepreneur in residence at a venture capital company. So I was exploring different ideas. And I had this idea around helping customers build a better wide area network. And, the short name for it was Better WAN, not very imaginative, but that was the thesis. And so when I started Silver Peak, we focused on helping customers move large amounts of information from place to place. So at that point in time in the mid-2000s, there was a big mismatch between the amount of information that people wanted to move. So video was just becoming popular. A lot of files were really huge compared to the size of the pipes that people had back then. Nowadays, the pipes are much bigger, so it's not so much of a problem. But in those days, the main obstacle for customers was moving the amount of information they wanted. So the first kind of 10 years of Silver Peak, we focused on that problem. And the industry name for it is WAN optimization, but that probably doesn't tell people as much as the long form I just gave. So we were a 5 times leader in Gartner's Magic Quadrant in that space. And then, around 2012, 2013, we saw this opportunity to help customers continue to build a better WAN, but rather than focusing just on moving data optimally, what about if we could help them move from an old kind of school MPLS-based WAN to something that leveraged the internet? And what if we, instead of just looked at optimizing the network, we actually replaced all those kind of traditional routers with something much more modern and automated? And that led us to Edge Connect, which we launched in 2015, and then growth off that got us to where we are today as part of Aruba.
As you were talking about the founding of of Silver Peak, I was thinking about how, back in the early 2000s, we were just getting ADSL. And in Australia, you could get 256K up to 1.5 megabits. And at the time, parliamentarians were complaining about 256K broadband. They were calling it fraudband because it really wasn't. It was barely faster than the dial-up that we had, and certainly not enough to sort of support any of the large files or video streaming that we all take for granted today. I mean, it's incredible to think that you can be driving down in a car at 60 miles an hour, and you expect your Netflix to work flawlessly, or on a plane. You just expect all these things to work, and that would have just been a dream back in when you founded the company. But that also leads me to a question that I love to ask the people that I interview, which is, can you please share the memories of your first computer?
Yeah, so the first computers I encountered were at high school, and we had TRS-80s, and since you're Australian, we also had the Dick Smith System 80s that were the compatible with the TRS-80.
The clones.
And then then we got Apple IIs. So that was kind of the era when I was at high school and when I first got interested in computing.
Yeah, my father bought me a computer in 1979. It was the Exedy Sorcerer, an American computer. The company sadly went out of business, but it wasn't until 83 that we got computers in school, which was one of the Apple IIs. And so by then I'd already been using them for 5 years. But Yeah, those were the days. And I used to dream as a kid of having 3D graphics and color, and because it was all green screen back then, as I'm sure you also
Yeah,
remember.
or even yeah, even the Apple II. It's like different pixels, odd and even pixels could be different colors. So
Yeah.
if you wanted purple, you had to be an odd pixel, and you couldn't be an even pixel, or something like that. I can't remember all the details,
Yeah.
but it was a very complicated
I'm sure there's some of those
set of limitations.
yeah, I'm sure there's some of those YouTube videos where they show kids an old computer. I've seen them where they show them a cassette tape. They're looking at it going, "What's this?" It only stores 60 minutes. You got to turn it around. So yeah, the kids of tomorrow don't, or kids of today probably don't realize just how incredibly lucky they are to have been born today, as opposed to decades in the past.
Yep.
So from the past to the future, how do you see Aruba, Silver Peak, SD-WAN, and everything else you're working on evolving over the next few years through to, say, 2030?
2030. Wow, that's asking for me to really polish my crystal ball. I usually look just a year or two out, but I think that what we're seeing is, as you talked about with the pandemic, it's really accelerated a lot of things that were going to happen anyway, and so that digital transformation is going to continue at pace. And I think one of the mega trends is there's been this kind of centralization of things into the data center and into the cloud. And I think we're in this stage now where so much data is being collected and there's a lot of value that can be extracted from that. So there'll be more computing distributed towards the edge. And the whole IT industry kind of ebbs and flows between distributed, centralized, backwards and forwards. So I think we're into that kind of 10-year cycle where we're going back to more distributed. It's not going to mean the cloud goes away. I totally don't think that. But what I think, I've heard said is that the cloud doesn't necessarily have to be about a destination like an Amazon data center. A lot of it's about an experience where you're using APIs, where things are automated. Whether the compute is in 5 data centers worldwide or it's in 500 locations spread around the globe, if the APIs are there and the experience is the same, why not go with distributed? And I think that that's what we're going to see is shift to the edge, and as HPE more broadly, with Aruba, we're thinking about networking, but as HPE more broadly, we're looking at how do we enable our customers in that kind of edge to cloud world.
I wanted to ask you a second last question, which is always simply to ask if you could please share some of the best advice that you've received in life to help you get where you are today.
Yeah, so I'll share one interesting thing that definitely got me to where I am today. So, I grew up in New Zealand, and I did my
that's on the edge.
there.
That's definitely on the edge, right?
Just hanging on right at the edge there. Yeah, and I was all set to start my PhD over there, and a professor from Australian University called me up and asked me if I'd come over and work with him on packet networking technology. And he convinced me that, forget about digital signal processing. The world's moving to packet networks. They're going to change everything. And this was in the late 80s, before the World Wide Web. But he painted this vision of networking's going to change the world. You should be spending your time in this area. And he sold me. And so I moved to Australia, did my PhD in Australia, and that, set me off on this path. So full credit to him.
It wasn't plastics like in The Graduate with
No,
Dustin
it's like
Hoffman.
the plastic
It was
story.
it was
though.
packets.
Yeah. Yes, except it was Hugh Bradlow. He was actually the CTO of Telstra.
Yeah, Hugh Bradlow.
Later on.
Wow.
So it was Hugh who I worked with.
Incredible. So what is your final message to iTWire viewers and readers, and to your current and future customers and partners?
Well, I think that we're in for, exciting time in the next few years. I really encourage people to be bold when they think about how do they set up their IT for this future. But, everyone is starting from a point A. They're trying to get to a point B. And each organization, they've got different point A, different point B. What we try to do at Aruba is help you along that journey, because virtually no enterprise can switch off A and turn on B on the Monday morning after they shut things off. They need to get there through a sequence of steps. And so we'd love to work with you to figure out your A and your B, and if we can help you get there.
Well, David Hughes, founder of Silver Peak and Senior Vice President of Aruba's WAN business, all part of HPE, Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Thank you so much for your time. I hope we get to talk in the future, and best of luck.
Yeah, this has been great, Alex.
Thank
Love
you
to
very
talk
much.
again.
Wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.